Good evening, YouTube. Today it is Wednesday the 23rd of August. I've had a very productive day. I want to talk to you about waiting charges and cancellation fees at the end of this video. But before I do that, let me tell you about my day. So, I started off outside the depot. I woke up at 6:30 and I managed to get out of bed pretty much straight away, which is really good for me. And I was unloaded by about 7:15, and then I made my way towards Aylesbury to drop off my second load that I picked up the previous night from Wolverhampton, and that was 45 minutes away. So by the time I had finished, I was ready to find another job at 8:20. And I was looking around to go hopefully north, there wasn't an awful lot around, but there was a job going from Aylesbury. It was 10 minutes from where I was, so very low dead miles. And it was going, unfortunately, not in the right direction, but it was going to Kent. So I picked up on it. It was for a small wheelbase. And I bid, it was 89 miles, I bid £90. And I obviously got that job. Picked that job up. And made my way to Kent. I had unloaded in Kent by about 11:10, and I was looking for another job, and luckily, quite quickly, I got a job from Rochester, which was about 4 miles from where I was. And it was going to let me get the name of the place. It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think what it is. Weybridge. Thank you. And it was for a small van job. I bid my minimum of £50. It was about 23 miles, 30 miles. And I got to oh yeah, so the other thing to tell you, it was a 1 PM pickup, so I had some time spare. I got myself to the location for pickup about 20 to 1 and just said, I'm here in case you're ready, and they were ready for me, and they put on to my van 2 boxes. It was a small van job, but when I put the boxes on, they explained to me that they wanted me to keep them the right way up, and one of the boxes was at 1 metre 34 centimetres long. The other box was 1 metre 47 centimetres long. And it was alright for me because I've got a large van. But I don't think that a small van would have taken the bigger parcel, the 1 metre 47 in height. They were both light parcels, they both weren't very big in volume, so they were, instead of size, they were the right size for a small van. But because they only wanted it in standing up, I think it would have not fitted in a small van. So I did call the shipper and just said to them, just so you know, if you get this situation again, you need to have a taller van than a small van. If I'd have been in a small van, it might have been a failed delivery. Unless we sent some photos through, which I did anyway. I was doing it as part of what I do. And left it on the TX photos. So whether they'll take a notice of that, no, I don't know. But done my bit. And so when I dropped off that one at Weybridge, it was 2:25 and so I was then looking for another job on the CX, and I got one. It was from Woking to an SW11 postcode. I was about 20 minutes away from the pickup, so it wasn't too far away, 2 miles. And so I made my way to that. They wanted a large van job for this. It was 23 miles for the actual loaded miles, and it was going into London. I wasn't that keen on doing it, but I did need to get a job done. I bid £75, and I think I got it because I was close to the pickup point, so that was nice. So I got my way to the pickup point, picked up the item, and then made my way to SW11. And on the way to SW11, something happened to me for the first time, and it was on the M3 heading. I sort of crossed the M25 heading into central London on the M3, and there was a helicopter from the National Grid hovering over the motorway. Obviously it was looking at the electrical cables, the wires, but it was right over my lane, and it was about 60 metres up, and I thought, so I wonder what's going to happen when I get underneath this helicopter. I was quite interested to know what happened, so I went underneath it. Nothing dramatic happened, but there was a significant downdraft that I felt to my van. It sort of, a little bit of a wobble happened as I went underneath the helicopter. So that's a new experience for me, driving into a helicopter that's in the air. So I got to SW11 and I unloaded my load, and this time, the time by this point was 4:20. So I thought I had time to find something else, but then I looked at my time to get home. It was a good 3¼ hours from where I was because the traffic was so heavy. So what I do in this situation, when I finish a job, I go through all the alerts that are on the system, getting rid of them, deleting them if they're not relevant, or making bids if they are relevant. I'm checking how far away I am using Google Maps. And once I've done that, I had about 3 bids in, and a couple of them for tomorrow, one of them for today, and then eventually all those bids didn't go to anything. And at that point I thought I'd make my way home, and I started to go home. This is about 4:30. I was starting to make my way back, and I got stuck in lots of traffic. And I did do this video actually. I did this video because I was stuck in traffic. My thinking was, if I'm stuck in traffic not moving, there won't be much road noise. Unfortunately, I've run out of memory, so most of the video didn't get saved, so that was a waste of time. But I have kind of practiced what I'm going to say today. Not that you'll ever know. It's going to be as rambly as ever. So I made my way back. I got, well, after about half an hour of moving, I got about 15 miles, and I was checking the feed all the time, and then a job came up from Harrow to Stansted, and I was 35 minutes from Harrow, and it was that came up at 6, sorry, and I had to be there before 7. No, so it's 6:15. I had to be there before 7. It was 35 minutes away, so I was going to be there for sort of 10 to 7. So I bid on it, £50. It was 52 miles for a small van. I thought that's an extra little bit of money, and it gets me halfway home. And I got it. So I made my way, slight deviation after I was going to Harrow, picked up this box. I had to wait around a bit because they weren't on site. They had to come from off site to bring the stuff to us. There's me and another driver waiting, but by sort of 7:15 I'd got out on my van and I was making my way to Stansted. Stansted trip was about an hour and 10 minutes. I did go to the wrong place initially. I've been to Stansted once before. I went to a place called Enterprise House and waited outside there, so I thought it was the same place. You can't go into the actual building, you have to go to the security guard. So I went to the security gate, waited there, rang the customer, and they said I'd gone too far to go back to another security gate. So I did that and delivered my parcel through a scanner to the guy that I'd phoned, and then finished off that job at about 8:30ish. So I have done today 4 CX jobs, and the last job really did get me a lot of the way home. So I'm about an hour and a half from home at the moment. So I shall give you some stats based on me getting home tonight, and then I'll talk to you about the other bits we'll talk about. Okay, let me get that in front of me. While I'm in front of me, I'll tell you a bit of an experience I had at the security gate. So I walked to the security gate office with this parcel, and there was loads of 2 or 3 security guys and another guy, all in high vis. And I said to them, "Are you one of the guys that I rang a moment ago?" And I had no answer. They looked blankly at me. And I thought, well, either I've mumbled or they don't speak English. So I said, "Oh, I've rang someone a moment ago. Are you any of the people that I just spoke to?" And then they said, "Put that in the scanner for into the parcel." And I said, I sort of hesitated because I wasn't sure I was actually in the right place. They said, "Yeah, put that in the scanner." Like, quite aggressively, I would say. No please or do you mind or whatever. Just quite aggressive, quite demanding for no particular reason, I would say. And there was one guy there, and he said he was the guy I spoke to. And luckily, he told me, because I said my name, I spoke to him. He said, "Are you this person's name?" And I said, "Yes." So I knew I had the right place now, but they really put my back up with their aggressive sort of talking. The security guards, not the guy I was delivering to. So I put it on the scanner, stuck it through, got him to sign my bed part, and then I left. Didn't take a photo. I wasn't going to push them, but I did one thing that I don't usually do. There was 2 security guys that did sort of talking, and they were looking at me, and I looked back at one of them in his eyes, didn't make any sort of sounds, looked at him, and looked him in the eyes. And for someone like me, looking someone in the eyes in a kind of what I was supposed to be an aggressive manner isn't really my thing. But I thought, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm going to look at you. That was my rebellion anyway. looking at him. Little things. So for today, my stats are as follows. When I get home, I will have worked today for exactly 15 hours. Another long day, really. And I will have driven a total of 361 miles, 361. I filled up with fuel today, so I've got a new average price for my fuel. It's 15.67 pence per mile. And so today I've spent on fuel £56.57 pence. Now, here's the exciting bit. What have I earned today? Well, I'm going to include today the drop-off at High Wycombe, which was from my pickups last night, Doncaster and Ripley, and that was for £230. I then went to Aylesbury and dropped off my load from Wolverhampton from last night, which was designed to be delivered this morning. That was £100. I then got a job from Aylesbury to Kent, which was for £90. I then got a job from Rochester to Weybridge for £50. I then got a job from Woking to SW11 for £75. And then the cherry on the icing on the cake, this has really made my day. On the way home, I got a job from Harrow to Stansted for £50, which gives me a grand total before expenses of £595 today. Now the caveat there is £330 of that is really the work I did for yesterday being paid today. So it's a bit inflated because of that, but I said that yesterday in my video. After my fuel costs, therefore, I've earned £538 today, and that will make up somewhat for the last 2 days being quite poor. Now, before I move on, I will just say, I did say in yesterday's video that CX is quite poor at the moment, and I said that after about 4 days of having a pretty difficult time on CX. So I would say that this jury's still out, whether it's going to pick up or not. One day doesn't mean it'll change your mind. It's still been quite tough. You can see today that I've done a long day, 15 hours, and I have done 4 genuine CX jobs that I picked up on the CX today. So I would argue that those 4 jobs comes to something like £265. Now I would argue that is because I was persistent and I put in the hours. It's not easy to make that much money on the CX, but it can be done with some skill, some experience, some determination, and some resilience. Tomorrow, and so I've got 2 more days this week. I'm really trying to get decent money for these next 2 days to make my target for this week. But today, it was an alright day. It's been long, but I've achieved 4 CX jobs, so can't complain really. Okay, so I want to talk now about, this next bit is really going back to basics. It's really designed for those people who have not started yet or are very new to doing this work. And it's about waiting time, charges and cancellation charges. I want to talk about all the things that I think are relevant about those if you're brand new or very new to this job. And there's quite a lot for me to cover, so I'll just get into it. So first of all, try and define a waiting time charge. So as a driver, you get a job and you get a fixed price for that job, and you know it before you start. A waiting time charge is an amount of money that you can add on to that job, the price of that job, in negotiation with the person that gave you the job. That's the important thing. You can't just add it on yourself because you feel like it, even if it's a genuine waiting time that happened. And it's really for compensating the driver for having to wait for longer than they should do, either at the pickup and or the drop-off points. I want to emphasise, and I'll say it a few times, it is a negotiated amount between the driver and the person that gives you the job, the shipper. So, the first thing I want to explain about it is you don't add it on to your invoice, the shipper does. And if you think about waiting time, if you arrive at a pickup place, the shipper isn't going to know that you have been waiting for longer than you should do. So you have to tell the shipper if you've been waiting, or if you expect to be waiting. That is always the first port of call when it comes to having a waiting time charge added. So you might go somewhere and you might expect there to be waiting because you've been there before. So you might, when you pick up the job and the shipper calls you, you might say to them, just by the way, before I even pick up this job, my waiting charges are these in case I need to use it on this job. That gives the shipper a heads up that A, you know what you're talking about, and B, what your charges are, in case they haven't seen them on your profile. Or if you get somewhere and it's obvious when you first arrive there that you're going to be waiting, maybe the forklift driver's on lunch, then the first thing you should do, after you've in your app selected arrived at pickup point and pressed the save button, as soon as you've done that, then you call the shipper to explain the situation. Always keep them in the loop, always update them about how things are going. The next thing I want to say is there is no set price or criteria for when waiting time starts. There are some protocols that can't be developed, but your price is whatever price you feel is fair. Now, in your profile of the CX, there is a section you put your waiting time charge and your handballing charge and your cancellation fee. And so you really must, before you take your first job on the CX, fill out those amounts. And if you're just really stuck as to what to put in, I'll tell you what I have in there. But there is no fixed expectation. All I'll say about the amount is, if you say you're going to charge £5 an hour, I think that you're going to be underselling your time. You're really undervaluing your time. And if you're going to say I'm going to charge £100 an hour, you're going to come into conflict with the person who's giving you the job, because no one's going to pay that amount of money. So this is what I mean about being no negotiation. What I've found is that the larger shippers, who are much more, the national shippers, they're much more price driven. They tend to specify quite low rates for waiting and cancellation fees. And medium-sized, smaller shippers who kind of know what it's like to be a driver, in my experience, they're much fairer with what they would pay. And often they decide for themselves what's fair even before you've asked for it. So there is two different approaches depending on who you are talking to some extent. The other thing I was going to say, in your profile, so what do I have? In my profile, I have something like this. My waiting time is £10 per part half hour after the first half an hour, which is for free. So what that means to me is, in the first 30 minutes of me waiting, I'm not going to charge anything. At 31 minutes, I have the right, according to my terms, to charge £10. And then at a minute past an hour, I've got the right, according to my terms, to charge another £10. Now, I put that rate in because I based it on the £20 per hour as being what I think is a fair amount of money for me to receive if I'm sitting in my van doing nothing. So waiting time is genuinely you're sitting there, you're not doing anything. But it is a loss of earnings to you as a driver. So it's important that you don't ignore that. Now, when I started, I remember the first time I had to ask for waiting time, and I was so nervous. And I asked, the kind of way I asked was sort of like, oh, I'm new to this, I'm not sure what to say about this, what do you think is fair for waiting time? And in the end, I got, I think, about a tenner for a half an hour. It was a fair amount. Maybe, it was an hour I'd been waiting for. No, more than that, maybe it might be an hour and a half. It was a long time anyway. And I got I think I got £15, and I felt I should have had a bit more for what I waited for. I think I should have had about 20, but I didn't argue about it at the time. I was just happy that I had that experience. Now, what I now do, and this is what I recommend you to do if you're new, is you just tell the shipper, I would like to receive X amount because I've been waiting for X period of time. Don't worry about it being offending anyone, because they will understand. All reasonable shippers, and every shipper I've come across so far, has absolutely understood that waiting time is something you pay for. And so don't be afraid to ask for what you would like. But it is a negotiation, remember. Just because you ask for an amount, it doesn't mean someone's going to agree with it. And this is where sometimes your personality can help or hinder you. So I tend to be firm, but fair in what I ask for. But if it's a shipper that has been good to me in other ways, and they say I really can't go that high, I'll compromise. Because at the end of the day, the more I argue, the more I'm getting everyone stressed and I'm wasting more time. So I just prefer to get it sorted out as soon as I can and get off site. When it comes to national shippers, I think you really have to be quite firm with them, because they will try and bid you down. And provided you do it in a professional way, I think the compromise should be more apparent. They might want to give you a £10 for an hour, or even nothing. I've come across a shipper that wanted nothing after up to an hour, and I thought that was really unfair. I didn't actually have waiting time, but it was in their terms. This is what I mean. Some shippers are quite unfair. My point there is that the amount that you charge is within a range. You negotiate it, but you're looking at 15, 20, 25, £30 an hour. Probably not 30, but that sort of range. You're not going to get any higher, you're not going to get any lower. And that is something you must negotiate with the job giver. So the way you do it really matters, your personality, your character. The other thing I want to say is there is genuinely no set rules for when it kicks in. Now, this is something I've learned about same-day courier work. There are very few rules about anything. It's just kind of some people have kind of worked to things that they've all accepted as being vaguely correct. But you could charge, in theory, waiting time after 5 minutes. I think you've struggled to negotiate that, and I think it's unreasonable. And some shippers I've seen say they don't pay waiting time until after an hour, and I think that's equally unreasonable, and I would not want that. If I got that imposed upon me, I would be blocking that shipper and not using them again. So the general consensus has come to the industry accepts half an hour as being the generally accepted norm for waiting time, and not that's free. So that's what I put into my figures, and I think it's a realistic, reasonable figure that if you've been waiting for half an hour, you definitely should be getting some compensation for more than that time, and it gives the shipper and the customer, if things go wrong at their end, sometimes it sorts it out without affecting your day too much. So half an hour is kind of the accepted norm, but it's not written down in stone. And you might find shippers who are perhaps driver shippers who decide, no, that's too long, I'll give you a waiting charge before then, or I'll give you more than you asked for because you've been waiting for more than half an hour. But that's what I mean about it's not set. And what is the waiting time for? So, if you're waiting and you can't load or unload, it is stopping you from finding your next job. There might be a really good job really close to you that you miss out on because you're waiting. And that's an opportunity that you haven't been able to take up because of somebody else's inefficiency. Now, you're never going to know for sure whether you missed out on a job or not, because it's a bidding process. So you might have seen a job and you might have thought, I would bid on that, but I can't. But you might not have got it anyway. So you can't say for sure you've lost out X number of pounds because you're waiting. But there is an opportunity cost there, and so the waiting time is the compensation to the driver for that lost opportunity. So it's something that, as a new driver, you must get into the habit of asking for, if it's, I would say, if it's fair and reasonable. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is handballing charges, which are separate on the CX system. Some shippers don't believe that exists. So, what's my view? Well, I believe that it does exist, but only because I've created it on my profile. That's the only reason it exists. Really, a handballing charge, in my mind, is a subset of waiting time. A handballing charge, if I can define it in the way that I think of it, it's when you spend more time unloading your vehicle or loading your vehicle by hand than you would reasonably expect to do for an A to B job. So in same day courier work, you're being paid to pick up an item from point A and take it as soon as possible directly without deviation to point B. And it's not really part of your job to be loading your van and unloading your van within reason, I would say. If you've got a box, it is reasonable to put that on yourself and take it off yourself. If you've got a pallet sitting there and there's a spare forklift, it is not reasonable for you to go and put that forklift, start the forklift and put the pallet on your van yourself. So that's why you cannot always load your van. If you've got to wait for someone else to do that for you, who knows what they're doing and is insured, then that wait, if you've got a handball on stuff, it's taking you time, extra time, then you're not really being paid for it. So, this is how I base my handballing charges, or the principles of one much. And I think there's a lot of grey area here. So again, handballing is always a negotiation with the shipper, and you must negotiate immediately before or immediately after you've done the handballing, preferably before if there's a lot and you haven't included it in your quotes. If you're told in advance that there is handballing, you can put it in your quotes, therefore you wouldn't add it on during the loading or unloading. But if you didn't know about the handballing, that's when the handballing charge kind of comes into play. But what it is really is it's the time you take. So if you're taking 15 minutes to load up your van because you've got a handball stuff on, then that's 15 minutes that you could have been on the road. If you've got to do the same at the other end, that's half an hour extra of in your day, which isn't really part of your remit. Now, if that was happening, you might decide, I'm happy to swallow that, I'm not going to charge it for it. Or you might at the end say, it's half an hour extra, I'm going to ask for, I don't know, £10 for handballing, or £15. So the way that I rationalise it is, I try to get £25 an hour for my time. And so if I'm going to be handballing something for half an hour, that's £12.50. So I tend to round it down to £10 or up to 15, depending on how hard it is. Or if it's an hour, £25. And that's how I base my charges. Now, as I said before, you have to talk to the shipper about handballing and explain why you think it's extra to your usual job. And both for handballing charges and waiting time charges, you must remember the following thing. When you get to your drop-off location, if you're going to charge extra money from the agreed quote you had at the start, you must click the arrived at drop-off point and press save. But at that point, do not press anything else on the app. Deliver your items and then call the shipper, because the way that you get the extra money added on is the shipper has to do it. So you talk to the shipper, you agree the amount of money for waiting time or handballing, and then you wait for a minute or so, and they will then update the amount of your quote by the amount extra that you've asked for or that you agreed to. And then once that's on your app, you can then click the loaded button and continue with uploading your pod and then creating your invoice at the end of the process. If you were to click loaded before you ring the shipper, they can't change the amount of money on your bid, and so it makes it very complicated to get your agreed amount of waiting time or handling charge. Next thing, there was something else about that I was going to talk about, but I forgot what it is. next thing I want to talk about is cancellation fees. And these are slightly different. Oh, sorry, I'll go back to the waiting time. It's the grey area I was going to talk about. So, I'm going to perhaps leave this as a question, maybe. I think that in life there's always a grey area, which is why I've said that it's a negotiation about the handball charges. So, this is the scenario that I want to share with you. Let's assume that we all agree that half an hour of handballing you get £10 extra. Let's just assume that for the sake of argument. And I get to a drop location. I've got 50 boxes, and it takes me. Let's say they're forklifted on, and I've got to handball them off. Let's say that takes me an hour to get the 50 boxes into the right location. I would then be expecting to charge, say, £20 for handballing because it's taken me an hour. But what if I had a trolley and I could do that same job in 15 minutes? It's the same amount of boxes, but I've managed to cut down my time from an hour's handballing to a quarter of an hour's handballing. So, I don't think in that case I would be asking for anything like £20 handballing charges, because it's the time that I've taken. It's the time, and it's a quarter of an hour. But there is, I suppose, an argument that you've put effort in. You've still moved 50 boxes, which is unreasonable, to another location inside. So there is an argument that there could be some handballing involved there. I'm not sure what I would do. I would just play. I would play every situation as it was dealt, and I would basically go by this rule: is it fair and is it reasonable? Whatever I'm going to ask for. And if I feel it's fair and reasonable, that's my judgment. And I can't sit here and give you all set rules about how you price up handballing, because I think it depends on how you define fair and reasonable, and how the shipper defines fair and reasonable. And remember, if you've put a bid in including it at the start, you can't add it on at the end as well. And so I've answered my own question. I would probably charge a bit because of the effort, but not as much. So because I've got a trolley on board, I'm losing out on potentially money, but I'm saving time, which is fine. So I'm in the round, I'm doing all right out of it. So the reverse is true, I think, and this is the reverse question. Let's say you've got a trolley and it takes you half an hour to do the handballing. I think it's very fair to ask for, say, a £10 handballing charge. But what if your trolley breaks down, or you forget it? Do you charge more for handballing because of that? I'll leave that as a question. My answer would be I would just take each situation as it comes and think what's fair and reasonable. And if I'd forgotten my trolley, I think I would say it's my responsibility. If it's broken down, I'd be saying, well, it's not my fault. Can I please negotiate with you some sort of extra money because it's taking me longer? Anyway, let me move on to cancellation fees. So, what is a cancellation fee? It can apply in different situations, but fundamentally, it's a fee that the driver gets in lieu of, not as well as, money they put on a bid for a job, because they haven't done the job because it's been cancelled. And it's not in my mind, if you've cancelled the job, you don't get a cancellation fee, you get nothing in that case. It's a cancellation because the customer has cancelled it or the shipper has cancelled it. And you need to put on your profile what your terms are. And I would say there's a difference between a cancellation before you've left the home, or if you're still on the road before you've started moving, and a cancellation when you've actually arrived on site. And I think if you've arrived on site and pressed in the app, arrived on site and saved, I think you've got a strong case for a reasonable amount of cancellation fee, because you've taken your time and your mileage to get to that point, and you've worked in good faith to pick up the point on time, pick up the load on time. If you're getting cancelled before you even left where you are, or just on the way, I think it's less of an impact on you, although it is very disappointing. There's a big emotional impact on you, but in terms of monetary value, it's not that high. You just stop, you find another job. It's disappointing, it's upsetting, but it's not the end of the world in terms of money. But I think if you've got to a location, you're right to have a decent cancellation fee. Now, cancellation fees for drivers cancellations are very disappointing. If you're geared up to do a job and you've kind of set your mind to do this job, then you gets cancelled. And sometimes you can understand why, because it's just one of those things. Sometimes it's the shipper being inefficient or incorrect, and it's less easy to understand it. But these mistakes happen. My cancellation fee terms have changed since I started, and they are roughly this. My cancellation fee, if I've not really left where I am, is £25. It's sort of half my minimum price for a job, and also they come to an hour's work. When I'm on site, I have a cancellation fee of 50% of the value of the job, and sometimes I get it, and sometimes I don't. Like all these things, it's always a negotiation, because the person who's giving you the job has their own terms for cancellation fee. So you can set your terms out, your expectations in your profile. The same is done by the shipper, but when a cancellation actually happens, you have to use your personality and your explanation skills, communication skills to argue your case and what you should have. And the bigger shippers, like before, will try and get the lowest price out as possible, and driver shippers or medium-sized shippers tend to be a lot fairer. You have to talk to them about it, explain the situation, and then come to an agreement. And the reason for having a cancellation fee is the same as before. It's the opportunity cost that you have as a driver. Now, in most cases, a cancellation fee will not cover what you've missed out on. And so what it needs to be thought about is, if you think about over a course of a year, you might get 6, 7, 10 cancellations. So what amount of money over the course of a year, because of a period of time, would give you an adequate amount of recompense for the lost earnings for those cancellations? You won't get the full amount that you would have earned if you'd done the job. But think about over a period of time, it averaging out. So I'm averaging out as £25 per case. Sometimes that might be most of the job. Sometimes it might be 10% of a job. It's a set amount. This is if I've not got on site. So the cancellation fee is just a bit of compensation over the course of a period of time that contributes towards your lost earnings. It won't fully match it. And again, the opportunity cost is something that you can't ever know. So it's just a question of a bit of compensation for the driver because they have lost out on a job. Right, I'm running out of battery. I think I'm going to leave that there. It's been a very long video, but I wanted to bring in another video for people who are new and have some basic understanding of those terms. Thank you very much for lasting all this time. Before I go, actually, I will explain one little thing because it's been bugging me. My video for yesterday didn't get downloaded until quite late today, but I did it last night, as you can see from the actual darkness in there. And my phone was trying to upload it all night and all day. For some reason, it has been really slow to upload that video. So this video might also be really slow to upload. I am going home now, so I'm hoping that when I get home, I can use the internet to upload this quicker. That's just a little point that was bugging me all day, that it was a late video because of that. Right, thank you very much for listening. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow. What have you learnt today?